It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you to Natalia and the rest of the Women in Digital business team for having me come and share on an important topic for all, but especially us Black women. I'm truly honored to be in the midst of such an excellent caliber of ambitious women. And I hope to encourage you along your journey to becoming and being the powerhouse Black women CEOs that you are. I'm Vanetta Morrison, emotional wealth strategist and the director of The Blueprint Way, an online coaching and counseling business helping Black and Brown women thrive from the inside out. If you have LinkedIn, feel free to find me there under Vanetta Morrison and connect. So, this masterclass is my invitation for all of us present here, live today or watching on replay, to amplify our voices in the face of environments that love to silence us. Despite being or becoming our own bosses, we often still operate in systems that question our expertise, undercut our success, and demand that we prove ourselves over and over again. Today, we break that cycle. So come with your journal, your notepad, a drink of choice, a blanket, because I like to stay warm and cozy at all times, and maybe even a box of tissues. And get ready to shift your mindset and raise your voice. As we delve into the topic, I want to start by sharing a bit about my story of imposter syndrome. And this is an excerpt from my book, Me, Myself, and Imposter: How to Boss Your Imposter Syndrome Through the Fraud Framework. I can't expect you to listen when you don't know who I am, so here's a little bit of my story. My first encounter with imposter syndrome was in the autumn of 2016. I remember how it felt, my first project board meeting as a newly double promoted project manager. I had tried to dress the part, my hair in long color 1B crochet faux locks, wearing my trusted combination of some tailored blazer, a pretty blouse, black skinny jeans, and dress shoes. Something I hoped would express girl boss energy that, introvertedly, screamed both confidence and curiosity, resilience and reliability, style and sensibility. On the inside, however, I felt stressed. I thought I might pass out or puke or both. My throat felt like it was closing in on me, so I kept reaching for my water bottle to keep my vocal cords ready whenever the time came for me to speak. As an introvert, I was used to feeling those nervous butterflies in my stomach every time before I said something. However, on the spectrum between introvert and extrovert, I'm more in the middle. One could say an introverted ambivert. So, for the most part, I had learned to push past those butterflies, put on a brave smile, and dive into the conversation before my brain could remind me of how daunting the situation really was. But this time was different. After all, I was sitting around a table of senior stakeholders, one of which was a university executive board member. Think C suite for my US readers, who was the project's senior responsible owner. They were looking at me to assert myself in my role. My role, project manager of a project that was missing its deadlines before I was even recruited. Project manager of a project that was high stakes and core to the university's admissions and enrollment figures, and therefore core to its finances. Project manager who felt like an imposter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take it back 6 years. So that's a little bit of my story. As we go through this masterclass, here's an overview on what you will learn as we spend more time together today. We'll learn to expose external examples that reinforce imposter syndrome. You learn how to rewrite your success story by examining some industry case studies of Black women CEOs and what they did to break through. And you'll also be invited to take bold actions and step into your CEO mindset by owning your achievements, boldly declaring your leadership, and strategically amplifying your voice. Stay with me till the end. I have a personal invitation for you to help you apply what we discuss today sustainably. All right, let's start with understanding imposter syndrome and its impact on Black women specifically. What is imposter syndrome? My working definition, following extensive research while writing my book, is that imposter syndrome is a persistent experience of inadequacy, incompetence, and context specific isolation in which objective successes are discounted or attributed to anything other than personal effort and ability. If you frequently find yourself feeling like you're not worthy, you're not capable, and like you don't belong and can't own any of your objective successes, you've experienced imposter syndrome. Now, why does it hit Black women differently? Imposter syndrome has a lot to do with not feeling like we belong. We struggle to internalize our successes in our given field of practice because we think we are not a valid or valuable member of that field. Hello to almost every Black woman who is the first or only, right? Some common triggers. And this might be because we're told to work twice as hard or the upgrade 10 times as hard. Although it seems nothing is ever enough, there's a persistent pressure to overperform. There's also racial bias and leadership barriers, from underfunding to being underestimated at all times. And then also we battle with stereotypes that undermine our confidence. We're seen as too aggressive or not qualified enough or too ambitious. So I invite you to reflect, to think of a time when you have had to overprove your expertise. What drove that feeling? There are two sources of imposter syndrome. Either it comes from within us or external to us. The first source is the inner critic, which you might have heard a bit about already, or what most of what you may know about imposter syndrome is related to. And if you want to find out more about the distinct definitions, negative consequences, different types, as well as solutions of how to navigate this particular inner critic imposter type, grab yourself a copy of my book. As I mentioned, it's titled Me, Myself, and Imposter, How to Boss Your Imposter Syndrome Through the Fraud Framework. But we also have the external bully imposter syndrome source. This is the one we'll be paying attention to today, because we Black women live at an intersection of a variety of isms. We know this. And this external bully is loud. But our aim is to be louder. Okay, so to the external bully. I'm speaking to you as aspiring and current business owners who have experienced this external bully on your journey to leadership and are hoping to move into positions where you can strategically resist and stop it from being internalized. The definition of the external bully. The external bully are the people and processes that inappropriately judge us as a fraud. It's commonly a result of a history of systemic exclusion and bias. As such, imposter syndrome is a symptom of systemic inequity. I'll repeat that again. Imposter syndrome is a symptom of systemic inequity. And there's one negative repercussion for us women business leaders not acting appropriately to resist these environments that prevent the external bully imposter syndrome, which I really want to highlight today. Because the reality is, they are there, the bullies are there, and at times, as much as we want to pull them down and hold them to account, that doesn't necessarily happen. But these are really ways, I want to share ways in which we can build that emotional capacity and where we can strengthen ourselves eternally to continue to resist these external bullies. So the repercussion that I want to share is that research has shown that female business leaders and owners often hold back from applying for business investments or business loans because of imposter syndrome. And that is, although they are more likely to have a robust plan and successful business ideas, so are more likely to be given the money if they do apply. But it goes back to us overproving ourselves. So our business plan overproves that we have a proof of concept, overproves that we are capable of making money through the business that we have. But imposter syndrome might be holding us back from actually putting ourselves into those places. So here's a reflection for you. Where are you holding back the creation of highly profitable businesses or complete industries because you haven't resisted the external bully triggered imposter syndrome? Okay, let's look at dissecting this external bully. What does it actually look like? The external bully imposter syndrome shows itself through 5 exotypes. And I developed these exotypes as a response to the gap I was finding in imposter syndrome literature, solely focused on blaming us individuals for our imposter syndrome. Working with my counseling and coaching client, it was apparent that pinpointing how externally controlled factors and in the workplace, leadership controlled factors negatively impacted on them. It was essential for us to be successful at doing the work on an individual level. So instead of asking ourselves as individuals, what's wrong with you? Why do you have imposter syndrome? The exotype asks the question and invites us to think about what happened to you? What did the environment you interacted with do to you? And that takes the blame off us as individuals and allows us to step back and understand our context a little bit better. So the disclaimer is that the terms here are quite negative, not because of us as individuals, but because of how the environment makes us feel. So there were originally 4 types when I wrote my book. But as I continue to do my research, even now, I recognize that some labeling changes may be useful and an additional type was needed as well. So I'm still refining this. This is a live work because these are lived experiences this is leaning on. So let me know your thoughts on these. So the 5 types are the alien, the clone, the abused, the infantilized, and the parentified. And we'll go through these. The first exotype is the alien. And you were bullied into feeling like a fraud, like an imposter, because the proof of alleged incompetence is that you are different. So as an alien, whatever has been declared as the standard or the norm looks, feels, sounds nothing like you. So you are left with a persistent or nagging feeling like you don't belong and that you're a fraud, even if you are actually achieving success in your context. Global majority communities experience this most times in white-dominated contexts. But gender differences can also result people in feeling like frauds because they're seen as aliens. Women in higher level senior leadership positions, women CEOs bossing it. Personality traits could also bring about feelings of feeling like an imposter. So there could be introverts in an extroverted environment and vice versa. CEOs are notoriously shown as being extroverted and out there, showing their face and all of that. Us introverts are tired. We want to find our own way in doing this sustainably. So in your own business, if you are neurodiverse or have a disability, if you juggle chronic health conditions, if you're pregnant or menopausal, if you're older or younger, if you're queer, in whatever way you represent an anomaly from what you are aiming or from the field or industry that you're in, from what has implicitly or explicitly been expressed as the norm in your industry, this exotype will try and silence you. The clone is the second exotype. This is where you're bullied into feeling like a fraud because the proof of your alleged incompetence is that you're not different or different enough. So as a clone, what has been declared as the standard looks, feels, sounds exactly like you or like a better version of you. So you are left with this feeling that you're just a small fish in a small pond and that you're a fraud for not aspiring higher. And this kind of happens whenever you're in your tribe, basically, like maybe even now in this actual summit and cohort of 100 most powerful Black women. You may have heard others who look and sound like you doing better or different things to you, and you feel like you're not enough. And so you end up minimizing your contributions. The third exotype is the abused. This is when you're bullied into feeling like a fraud because the proof of your alleged incompetence is the fact that you're actively being victimized, abused, bullied, discriminated against, gaslit. As someone who is abused, no matter what you do, it never seems good enough, and success seems to always evade you. So you're left with this persistent and nagging feeling like you amount to nothing, and that you're a fraud, hoping that you don't deserve where you are now, or that you deserve to be somewhere else, or to deserve to be doing something else. In a counseling context, working with those who've been abused, it is that they often don't see their value or worth. So any sense of liberation or progress or movement or the development makes them feel like a fraud because they don't feel like they deserve it. And the knock-on effect of that is that they are silenced by shame and can't speak up for themselves necessarily. Moving on to the fourth exotype, the infantilized. This is when you are bullied into feeling like a fraud because the proof of your alleged incompetence is the fact that you are being made to be dependent on others, codependent on others, people enforcing excessive and inappropriate reliance on themselves. And this is really still a form of abuse, but it's often seen more as socially more accepted. So in the context of work, this could be someone micromanaging you, which is really the excessive supervision and inappropriate control of your working processes down to the detail. How does that look like in a business, as a business leader, as your own business owner? It could be that a supplier or a client has a particular way that they want to engage with you, even though you are the one providing the service or the product. As someone who is infantilized, you never really get to make decisions for yourself because whoever has declared themselves as an authority figure wants to keep you dependent on them. So for the sake of profits or whatever reasons they come up with, they try and regulate every detail of your work life, every detail of that contract, every detail of that statement of work. And this kind of leaves you with a persistent and nagging feeling like you're not capable of doing anything for yourself, really. And you think you're a fraud just considering independence. Ultimately, what this does is erode trust in your own decision-making ability. And on to the final, newest, fifth exotype, the parentified. As a parentified, you're bullied into feeling like a fraud because the proof of alleged incompetence is the fact that you're often overwhelmed by your work. As someone who is parentified, you have been given responsibilities that are genuinely outside your level of competence and specifically outside your remit of actual authority. So, for example, being the one-woman DEI team for the whole workplace, or being made head of a department that is failing miserably. It's like you're not afforded the grace or the onboarding period where you're allowed to be a learner and ask questions. We're allowed to be childlike. There's a level of childlikeness that in a psychologically safe workplace is allowed to us, where we're allowed to learn, we're allowed to ask questions, but you're not afforded those graces. You're not allowed to shadow others, but there's an expectation that you will thrive immediately and show everyone else the way, not just for yourself, but for everyone else. You'll pave the way for everyone else. So you then become the office or team mama. And at this point, I want you to check out the mammy trope. You might know it already anyway, as an unpleasant slavery souvenir. So you are then employed or contracted to pick up the slack of those senior to you and bear the load of it all by yourself without recognition of your actual work and effort required. And this can leave you with a persistent or nagging feeling like you're not good enough, leaving you feeling guilty for feeling overwhelmed and not realizing that you've actually been set up to fail. It's like you're made captain of a sinking ship with little to no support from senior stakeholders, but you're responsible for all the risk. So ultimately, your promotion was replacing your previous glass ceiling with a slippery glass cliff. And if you do end up succeeding against all odds, you may still find yourself at the odds with senior leadership as you've progressed from pet to threat in their eyes. And I talk about that phenomenon in my book as well. It's a very interesting one. Feel free to Google that as well. So how do we tackle the external bully? Because really, it is the primary responsibility of leaders of institutions and leaders of businesses to tackle systemic inequity within them. The pressure shouldn't be on them, should be on them and not on us as individuals. And I usually speak to leaders about how they should develop imposter-free workplaces. And that is, surprise, surprise, intimately connected with developing workplaces that are mature in their DEIB practices. If you're unable to change things for yourself based on the following recommendations that are coming, that is because the biggest piece of work is up to the gatekeepers, not down to you. With that in mind, there are a couple of things I want to encourage you to do to protect yourself in these environments as you navigate them, and reframe the exotypes for your benefit, not to let others off from their responsibility. Right, so introducing the imposter exotypes reframed. So despite the very negative labeling of the actual imposter exotypes, I truly believe there is hope for each exotype too. Each of these types can be reframed for our benefit. But there's one disclaimer, major disclaimer that I'm going to add before I move on. These reframed types point to leadership positions set out to engage with and change and challenge culture. AKA, they point to bold CEO moves. But if any of what follows is too much for you, please do not take it on. Don't burden yourself. If you do feel called to provoke change in your sphere or just interested in what it might look like, listen out for one individual strategy for each of these types to help amplify your voice in the face of your environment trying to silence it. And what I'm excited about as well is that I've included some case studies for each of the Black women CEOs making these moves. So the imposter exotypes reframed. So we go to the ambassador, the architect, the activist, the agent of self-actualization, and the healthy inner child. So a letter to the alien. Dear alien, in fact, you are not an alien, but an ambassador to a brave new world. To help you feel more comfortable in your ambassador role, start by embracing and protecting your difference. You are the only one who can master being you. And if people refuse to allow you to do so, it might be time to pack up and leave. It might be time to switch supplies. It might be time to change your clients. I understand there's financial and economic repercussions of those as well. But see, if that's the only option, then that's what we need to do. But if you're staying, then embrace and protect your difference. Cultivate and contribute to safe places of like-minded people, like the Women in Digital Business community. Create your own communities in your industry. Celebrate your difference. Show up authentically, letting your fashion, your food, your traditions, your names, and the insistence on the correct pronunciation of those names be an expression of that. And there are so many amazing examples of Black women being ambassadors of Brave New World. There might be so many watching this masterclass right now that are doing this. But some that I wanted to introduce today is Rosalind Brewer, who was the previous CEO of Walgreen Boots Alliance. She was the only Black woman CEO in a Fortune 500 company at the time, and she used her power to build strong alliances and champion supplier diversity to create opportunities for other Black-owned businesses. We have Bozoma St. John, former Netflix chief marketing officer. She transformed corporate storytelling to be culturally relevant. And to a UK-based sister, Charlotte Mayer, founder and managing director of The Fitting Room, an award-winning independent global cultural brand marketing and communications house. She has worked with the likes of Idris Elba, Meta, Burger and Lobster. All of these women ambassadors in their own right to this brave new world. A letter to the clones. Dear clone, you in fact are not a clone, but an architect of a brave new world. To help you feel more comfortable in your architect role, start by embracing and decoding your context. You can identify standard practices in your context in case they need replicating somewhere else. And they always need replicating somewhere else. So consider mentoring women a few steps behind you in your career, in your business, in your industry. That way you might realize that you are able to provide insight and advice no matter what level you are at. And also consider facilitating external training or delivering options or training or delivery options to help recognize you do provide value in other contexts. Again, there's so many examples of Black women being architects, amazing examples, but I want to highlight 3 here. Caroline Wanga, president and CEO of Essence Magazine, self-proclaimed cultural architect with a particular passion for constructing, deconstructing, and reconstructing organizational culture. Powerful. But what about our very own Women in Digital Business CEO, Natalia Nicholson, Chief Empowerment Officer, aka the Funnel Queen? She's helping women decode how to scale our businesses. And dare I say myself, Vanetta Morrison, emotional wealth strategist, helping you thrive from the inside so that you can thrive from the outside. Abused, to those who have been abused, you in fact are not just a victim, but can choose to be an activist, demanding change by force, but only if you want to. To help you feel more comfortable in your activist role, start by escaping your oppressors and empowering yourself. Abuse is never acceptable. If you need help removing yourself from abusive or discriminatory situations, speak to HR, connect with your local helplines and support centers. If it's a supplier or a client that is being abusive towards you, look at how you can terminate your contract. Make sure that your contracts include clauses in them that relate to how you're being treated. Get therapy to process the abuse and trauma in a gentle and safe way, so it's no longer holding you back. Join healing circles and communities that support you in deconstructing and reframing and understanding the trauma that you've experienced. And I want to highlight 2 great examples of Black women being activists. We've got Melody Hobson, who's the former chair of Starbucks, now president and co-CEO of Ariel Investments. After experiencing racism, sexism, and poverty growing up, Melody resolved to dismantle barriers to people's advancement by integrating financial literacy into curriculum in predominantly Black schools. She has also developed a private equity fund called Project Black, I just love that, to scale minority-owned businesses, because activism can also be financial. In fact, I would argue activism has to also be financial for there to be sustainable change. On our side of the pond, our very own Jamelia Donaldson, founder and CEO of Treasure Tress. From enduring a history of being followed around the beauty store and terrible customer service, so followed around the beauty store to make sure she's not stealing anything, just to make that very clear, to creating the UK and Europe's first natural hair subscription box service. The lesson that these women teach us is that if the system is trying to bring you down, create your own. To the infantilized, de-infantilized, you in fact are not a helpless child, but an agent of self-actualization. To help you feel more comfortable in your agent of self-actualization role, start by escaping your smotherers and empowering yourself. Dependency, codependency, and infantilization is never healthy. If you need help removing yourself from stifling work environments, again, if you're still in the workplace, speak to HR. If you are a business owner, look if you can look into other work contracts. If you're still in the work, see if you can get another line manager. Just, find out and figure out a way to change these environments for yourself. And again, therapy is helpful to work through any mistrust of self issues that might have occurred and to learn to trust your own voice again. The example that I want to highlight of a Black woman being an agent of self-actualization is Shelley Archambault. She sits on the boards of Verizon and Nordstrom, among others, and is an advisor to the Royal Bank of Canada, among others. And in her early career, she was frequently dismissed as not ready, not ready. And yet she positioned herself as a strategic problem solver and leveraged mentorship and sponsorship to bypass some of these barriers. And again, the lesson is similar. If they won't open the door, find your own exit, build your own. And finally, the parentified. Dear parentified, you, in fact, are not an overwhelmed failure, but a healthy inner child deserving of love. To help you feel more comfortable in your healthy inner child role, start by setting smart goals and boundaries with senior leadership and senior leadership teams. Let everyone be very clear on what is expected, what it requires, and how realistic those expectations and requirements are. I remember in the workplace when that we had an activity to map out how much time we actually spent on the work that we were doing. And I found it so liberating to realize, oh, it's not just all in my head. This is a lot. Be kind to yourself by working according to smart KPIs and adjusting them when necessary. Advocate for yourself when things seem overwhelming by setting clear boundaries. Again, doing the research for this book, I remember hearing about a case study where a woman was frazzled by all the work that she had to do and just completely overwhelmed and was internalizing all of that. And then I think the next, she left the role and a man came into that role, took on the role. I don't remember the details, but they are in the book. The man took on the role and immediately upon starting said, this is too much for one person. These are the things that need to be put into place. And it's so interesting how the woman internalized that, but the man recognized that structures need to be put in place to assist in the role. And this happens so often. And so one thing I would definitely encourage is research industry norms in workloads where you can. So let AI be your friend in that research, but network with others in similar roles. Understand what the baseline is supposed to look like. Don't let yourself be hoodwinked into something because there's no one around you doing the same job, because you're the only person in DEI, because you're the only person doing whatever else. Reach out, connect, and find out what is the standard and what is acceptable. And see if you're being required to work well above what is set as an industry baseline. The one great example of a Black woman investing in her inner child I want to highlight is Marilyn Booker. She was the head of diversity at Morgan Stanley for 16 years. She worked faithfully, loyally at Morgan Stanley for 24. This service that she did to Morgan Stanley included her standing in for the company in 2008 in Congress in 2008, American Congress in 2008. And remember, 2008 was the economic crash caused by the banks. So the one Black woman got to stand in front of Congress on behalf of the bank. So it's always the one woman for all, but not necessarily, most often not all, for the one woman. And she ended up suing the company for exploiting her and making her, I quote, a token response and symbol of its purported commitment to diversity. Sometimes the best thing you can do to protect your inner child is publicly call out injustice and sue. I know in the US there's more of a sue culture than in the UK, but sometimes we need to be mindful of what are our rights. Understand your right. So Marilyn is now the CEO of Upswell, a dynamic social media networking platform matching buyers and suppliers for contracting opportunities. Right. We've come to the end of these imposter exotypes reframed. And I want to find out, like, what exotype do you relate to the most? What reframed type was most successful for you? These reframed exotypes in particular unlock your CEO moves to resist the external bully. Okay, to recap on what we've discussed today, to empower your inner CEO, empowering your inner CEO starts with recognizing what is holding you back. What is your exotype? And the question is to understand what happened to you that is causing you to inappropriately sit down and be humble. No way, we're not doing that. Catchy song, but not a good lifestyle, not a good motto. It's important to understand your imposter exotype and start ripping it to shreds. Unlock the strength of your reframed exotype. And then consider, what are the CEO moves you can implement instead? All right, ladies, we have spent this time together uncovering the truth about imposter syndrome, how it sneaks in, how it silences us, and most importantly, how we can take our power back. But this isn't just a one-time conversation. Like I said, those were just one top level, almost quick win moves for each exotype. It's not just a one-time conversation. True transformation happens in community. And that's why I want to personally invite you to join the waiting list for the Me, Myself, and Imposter Therapeutic Book Club. I'm in the process of designing this safe space for powerful Black women professionals and leaders just like you. We will come together virtually once a month and dive deeper into my book, Me, Myself, and Imposter, and work through this framework, my fraud framework. It's not just about reading, but about reclaiming our confidence, challenging self-doubt, owning our successes unapologetically in community. Let's do this together. If you resonated with this masterclass, you will love the book club. Imagine a safe, empowering space to unpack your experiences in the presence of a therapist, qualified therapist. Imagine practical strategies to silence that inner critic and the external bully in real time. So bring your scenarios, your case studies, bring your real life experiences, and we will problem solve together. And imagine a sisterhood of powerful women lifting each other up. If you're ready to not just learn, but live in your power, email me to join the waitlist. My email is vanetta@blueprintway.com. And just drop it in the subject line, MMI Book Club. MMI, Me, Myself, and Imposter Book Club. It's really time to stop questioning your greatness and start standing in it. So let's do this together. Okay, today I've shared with you some of our stories. So many incredible women on this slide. But for tomorrow, I've intentionally left a space on this slide because next year, 2 years, or 5 years from now, I want to be telling your stories of success in the company of these established trailblazers to those who are coming in after us. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to learn more about the work I do and receive tailored support for yourself, please stay in touch with me. Take care. Bye.